instead of us trying to see who the bigger meathead is, when you push me, I get out of the way of that force, and now I can respond with less effort. One, we're being more considerate, which is something that we could all do more of. And two, it allows us to be more strategic and guide the conversation to a positive outcome with the least amount of resistance. And this is beneficial in our relationships, in business and sales and negotiations. I mean, there's so many different ways that we can apply this. A lot of our ability to read people at a higher level is not only, listening to their words, but their tonalities and their facial expressions and their body language, but then also even at a higher level is paying attention to their energetic state before they even do anything. And you can see this at a deeper level by adapting a meditation practice into your life. We want to be 100% in the movement, in that present movement, not thinking about 3 moves ahead, not thinking about anything else than just the awareness and the experience of that feeling and what's happening in the moment. What gets you to a high level in that practice is a deeper level of feeling. And the only way that we're going to reach that deeper level is that consistent effort and continuous drive to find that present state of being and increase that awareness. You start to develop this power and this ability to, one, recognize the distractions when they first happen, and two, have the tools to help bring you back to a present state and be more focused. Somewhere along the way, people got this misconception that in order to be successful with meditation, that you have to reach this state of nirvana and have nothing bother you, and it couldn't be further from the truth. Understanding philosophies like this and really investigating them and breaking them down and seeing what they mean helps train our mindset and our strategy towards how we approach life.
This is the Business Philosopher Within You podcast. I'm your host, Bhavesh Naik. An essential part of what we explore on this podcast is what it means to be a human being, so that we can bring to bear all our human faculties to building a high-functioning business organization that can stand the test of time. One way to explore the deepest essence of our humanness is through what is known as meditation. However, there are many theories and ideas and perhaps even misconceptions about what meditation is and how to practice it. To help us demystify this topic a bit, I've invited a very special guest to join us. Jeff Patterson has been practicing and teaching martial arts and meditation for 36 years. He is a black belt or equivalent in several forms of martial arts, including Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Kenpo, Tai Chi, and Qigong. He has taught meditation and martial arts to over 25,000 students through his martial arts academy, the Yielding Warrior online program. He has published 3 books, including his latest, The Yielding Warrior. Jeff's methods are designed to integrate into daily life, providing holistic health and well-being in every aspect of our lives, mental, physical, and emotional. I am pleased to have you on this podcast, Jeff.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.
If you could get us going and lead us through a quick meditation that is sort of like for beginners, and also lead us through anything that we need to do to prepare for being in that meditative state, if you will.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And so what I'll do is I'll take you through a real basic breathing exercise and kind of an intro or a warm-up into a meditation to pre-frame the body and the mind and get us in the right state. But before we do that, I'd like to talk a little bit about the mindset of approaching a meditation practice. One of the most common things I've heard through my years of teaching the meditative arts is I'll have people come to the academy or reach out to me online and say that, I've tried meditation, but it just didn't work for me. I couldn't quiet the mind, and somewhere along the way, people got this misconception that in order to be successful with meditation, that you have to reach this state of nirvana and have nothing bother you, and it couldn't be further from the truth. I've spent the last 36 years of my life traveling around the world, studying with some really amazing meditation practitioners. And I have never once met anybody who doesn't get distracted. You know, we
Yeah.
all do. We're all human. And when you
Mm-hmm.
approach it with that mindset and understanding, you'll realize that when these distractions come, you're not
Yeah.
failing. So
Sure.
when you're doing say a sitting meditation or a movement meditation like Tai Chi or Qigong, or maybe a
Mm-hmm.
standing meditation,
Sure.
you may get distracted 50 times in a 20-minute session.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is every time you get distracted, you recognize the distraction, you use your posture, your breath, your movement, if it's a movement practice, to help
Mm-hmm.
bring you back to focus. And once you've done this, now you just got 50 repetitions of how to be out of balance and coming back to center. And if you do that every day, every month, every year, you start to develop this power and this ability to, one, recognize the distractions when they first happen, and
Right.
two, have the tools to help bring you back to a present state and be more focused. And so
Sure.
if we approach it with that mindset, you'll realize that you can feel almost excited to notice the imbalance or the
Mm.
distraction, and just
Yeah.
recognize it, bring yourself back to center, and realize that that's
Sure.
part of the process and not that you're failing. So with
Okay.
this meditation, what we're going to do is I'm going to keep it real short since we're on a podcast and maybe just
Mm-hmm.
do a few minutes of it.
Yeah.
But the idea with this breathing exercise we're going to begin with is to stimulate the carbon dioxide oxygen exchange in the body and
Mm-hmm.
get the body prepared to settle down and be a little bit more quiet. So
Yeah.
I'd like you to go ahead and start by sitting in an upright, comfortable position, or if you're standing, that's fine as well. And remember, if you're doing anything else like driving or something like that, maybe just listen and not so much follow along. But
Sure.
this first exercise, we're going to focus on the inhale and exhale, and I call this the rapid breath. And so when you inhale, you're going to focus more on the abdomen, and almost like you're sucking the air in like this through the nose. And then when you exhale, open the mouth. And we're going to do 3 sets of 15 on this, and you just follow along. So follow me with this. So and relax. Take in a deep inhale and exhale. And do another set. And relax. And one more round. And relax. Now, I want you just to center yourself and maintain that upright posture. And as you inhale, think about bringing the energy inward to the center of your mind. And as you exhale, relax the abdomen. Let the breath fully, completely exhale out of the lungs, and maintain that focus on the center of the mind. Slow, even breath, almost as if you were sipping the air through a straw. And just find your own rhythm. Inhale and exhale. You can lightly close the eyes if you want. And if you are leaving the eyes open, don't focus on any one thing. Let your gaze kind of fade and open up your peripheral vision. As we inhale, notice any area in the body where you might be holding tension. And when you exhale, try to let go of that tension and sink into the posture while maintaining that upright structure with your skeleton. Now go ahead and slowly open your eyes. You can roll out the shoulders a little bit and try to bring your awareness back into the body. Now, we did this very briefly, and this would be what I would call a reset practice. So with any kind of meditation practice, there's kind of three pillars in your practice. We have ritual practices, active practices, and philosophical practices. Ritual practices are when you set time aside every day and maybe you meditate for 20 minutes or a half an hour or an hour, whatever that is for you. And you focus on a sitting practice like we just did, or a movement practice, or maybe a standing meditation, something where you turn off all audios, you're not listening to videos, and you really turn your inward focus. This would be our ritual time, and we want to do a little bit of this every day, and it's a real essential part of developing a meditation practice. Then we have active practices and reset practices, and this is kind of like what we just did. These are things that you can do in as little as 60 seconds or 3 minutes, and they're examples of just bringing our awareness back to the present multiple times throughout the day. And you can do this by doing a simple breathing exercise or a movement exercise or maybe some spinal rotations, something that helps us come back to that present state of mind. Because when you're doing meditation, while it might feel very relaxing and good to you to go in and go into that meditative place, but if the rest of your day is stressed out and unfocused, it kind of doesn't really make any sense. And that's why we
True.
want to make this a lifestyle and less of a hobby that we do once in a while. And so
Mhm.
we integrate these active practices. And the nice thing about them is that you can do it when you're walking down the street or standing
Right.
in line at the grocery store. And when we incorporate these things into our day, it really starts to add value and enhance our ability to get to deeper levels in our ritual practice. And then
Sure.
the third pillar is philosophical practices. And these can be integrated in both active practices as well as our ritual practices. And if we have these three pillars, now we can kind of start on the path of building a life practice around meditation.
Absolutely. That was great. I am all relaxed. And it's going to take me a while to kind of, begin to ask questions. But I've also found that you talk about present moment. Some of the best questions I ask, when I do these interviews with folks on podcast, the best questions the best questions come from the present moment, right? When I'm not prepared, I don't know what I'm going to ask next, and the question just arises from the moment. So, and it's a great place to be. A little bit of feedback that I want to give you is, I sometimes have lower back pain, and the little instruction that you gave towards the end of that meditation that you led us through, where you say, correct your posture and make sure that you're sitting or standing straight. That just kind of made a big change in the way I'm standing, and then immediately, so I just stood up and brought my awareness to my posture, and then just kind of straighten out my back. And that took the pressure off the lower back. And, the pain doesn't, I don't feel that pain right now.
Nice.
So yeah. A couple of clarification. Well, one clarification is that when you said, and if, folks who want to listen to this again and do this practice, you said, bring your focus or attention to your mind. So now in mind, did you mean the head area at that time or the brain?
So I said the center of the mind, and I didn't go into too much detail because we're doing this kind of in a quick style of a meditation practice. But to explain that a little bit more clearly is for this practice, we focus on what we call the upper dantian. And the upper dantian is located in the pituitary and pineal gland, which is in the center of the mind. So if you were to draw a line straight through your head from the top of one ear to the other, and then from the center of the brows to the center of the back of the head, where those two lines cross is approximately about where your pituitary and pineal gland are.
Sure.
And by focusing on that one little point, and maybe make it the size of a pea or a BB, very small sphere.
Sure.
What happens is through time, and I realize in that short meditation that we did, it's kind of difficult to really experience this, but by focusing on that one point, it starts to calm down the activity in the brain and relax the thoughts. So we're bringing them into an isolated focus that helps quiet the mind and be more focused. And you'll find when you're sitting and doing a meditation, when you do get distracted and you do have a thought that's taking you in a direction, you'll notice that your thoughts are drifting away from the center of the mind. And so using this as kind of a tool to help maintain that focus is really valuable.
Absolutely. Something else that you mentioned, it's a term called the present. I think you said come back to the present or present moment. Could you talk about that a little bit? What is meant by being in the present moment or being present?
When we're doing a meditative practice or even throughout the day, if we're sitting here and you and I are having a conversation and I'm thinking about all the things I got to do today and what you're going to say next and, what I did yesterday, I'm not going to have very thoughtful responses. So when I'm here working with you, you're where I'm focused. I'm thinking about you. I'm present 100% in the moment.
Exactly. Okay.
And when you're doing a movement practice or a sitting practice, whatever that is, we want to be 100% in the movement, in that present movement, not thinking about 3 moves ahead, not thinking about anything else. And just the awareness and the experience of that feeling and what's happening in the moment. Because any meditation practice that you do, whether it's a sitting practice, a movement practice, you're doing Tai Chi or yoga or whatever it is, what gets you to a high level in that practice is a deeper level of feeling. And the only way that we're going to reach that deeper level is that consistent effort and continuous drive to find that present state of being and increase that awareness. And so that's what I'm talking about when I say that.
Absolutely. Sure. And use the deeper levels of feeling. So it's basically coming in touch with your feeling. So it's somewhere. So the focus is more internal, within the body, or perhaps in the body, rather than being outside the body. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is very internal. It almost as if it comes from your spirit, and that true kind of source of who you are, not who you kind of sometimes present yourself to be in the outer world.
Yeah. Almost like an emptiness. There is this sky openness feeling throughout the body, and it may be different experience for different people, but that's what I am, probably because of the meditation that we did. But it's like this open feeling. It's just like space, and that just kind of runs throughout the body, right? So that's how it is for me. By the way, once again, I don't want to basically project my experience on others. The people's experiences might be different. In a conversation, you said, my focus is on you. And this is important because, in business situations or any situation, any relational situations where, family or, your mate or whoever, it's important to kind of know the presence of mind. So there is the focus on the body and the attention on the body, and then the attention on the other person. And are they mutually, or do you ever get to a point where they are not mutually exclusive, meaning that it's not just that I'm focusing here, then I'm focusing on you, and I'm focusing here? Can it be both?
I think a lot of our ability to read people at a higher level is not only, listening to their words, but their tonalities and their facial expressions and their body language, but then also even at a higher level is paying attention to their energetic state before they even do anything. And you can see this at a deeper level by adapting a meditation practice into your life. There's this concept of yielding that I'm really passionate about, and it's why I named my last book The Yielding Warrior. And there's three different directions of yielding. There's physical yielding, mental yielding, and emotional yielding. Physical yielding is the idea that I push you, you push me, whoever's the bigger, stronger person with the most leverage eventually is going to push the other person over. But with yielding, instead of us trying to see who the bigger meathead is, when you push me, I get out of the way of that force, and now I can respond with less effort. So it allows me to deal with people who are bigger and stronger than me, which is very essential for anybody in athletics. Now, in order to be good at physical yielding, a lot of things have to come into play. You need to be well-rooted. The lower part of your body needs to be strong and flexible so you can change your central equilibrium without getting tight. The body has to be relaxed, the breath has to be calm, and the mind has to be present. Now, while it may be a lifetime journey to really master these skills, from day one, by adapting a meditation practice into your life, you start seeing these things more clearly. And this is where it becomes very interesting. And now we're moving into what I call mental yielding. So say, for example, you and I are having a conversation, and because of my heightened awareness
if I can stop you just for a second, I just want to go back to physical yielding. So sorry about that.
That's okay.
So physical yielding is basically, instead of pushing back, you getting out of the way. And is that did I get that right? As in, if I'm punching, for example, right? We put a lot of effort into that, but then there are sometimes, so it can be a very effortful punch, or it could be just a more natural punch. And then sometimes folks talk about power versus force. I'm being forceful, but then, or I'm just being powerful. And then yielding kind of happens when I'm dealing with someone else. So they come at me. Instead of pushing back or using force to get back at them, I kind of get out of the way and use their inertia, their body, whatever force that they're coming at me with. I manipulate that in some way so that it's beneficial to me. Sorry.
In a sense, that's correct. However, it's a little bit more complicated than that, and that it's not just getting out of the way. It's getting out of the way of the initial force and then redirecting them and taking them strategically to where you want to go that's going to make them most vulnerable so you can get to where you want to go with the least amount of resistance. And so there is a strategy behind it rather than just running. A lot of people, when they hear yielding, they think they're giving up.
Right.
And it's not giving up. It's very strategic, and it's used in military conflicts for generations. They'll use the idea of yielding to win battles against stronger armies. And so it's a very strategic concept.
Okay, sure. So thank you for that clarification. So mental.
So when we move into mental yielding, when we have developed a higher sense of awareness inside of ourselves, we also start to see these things more clearly in other people. So say, for example, we're having a conversation and I say something that unsettles you, and I pick up on it from that first sign of imbalance. it's a lot easier to adjust the conversation and keep us in a happy place than if
Right.
I'm not paying attention to that. And pretty soon
Yeah.
I'm so far off track, you want to slap me upside the head. And
Right.
so learning how to use yielding in all of our interactions is extremely powerful. One, we're being more considerate, which is something that we could all do
Yeah.
more of. And
100%.
two, it
Yeah.
allows us to be more strategic and guide the conversation to a positive outcome with the
Yeah.
least amount of resistance. And this is
Yeah.
beneficial in our relationships, in business,
Yeah.
and sales, and negotiations. I mean, there's so many different ways that we can apply this.
Sure.
And then
Sure.
the third pillar is emotional
I'm
yielding.
sorry. So let me I wanted to kind of go back to mental.
Sure.
So then, so this probably comes into play when we're having, for example, a discussion or an argument, or there is a conflict so this is a battle of ideas. Someone is saying something, and there might be a perception of two opposite sides trying to have a negotiation or trying to come to a common ground. And then there's a back and forth, and there might be some sort of a, disharmony between these two people, and they're trying to come to some kind of terms. That's where it's one example of where mental yielding can come into play.
For sure, it could happen in that scenario, but a lot of times the great thing about this practice is that we could recognize the imbalance before it gets into too much disharmony. So if you notice it from that first sign of going off track, then it never, because it's difficult sometimes if somebody gets really excited and, a little bit off on the edge to bring them back. And so if we can notice that first imbalance, a lot of times it's easier to guide it in a different direction.
Yeah. I love that, because what you're saying is that if I can notice it right before it's about to happen, because once you build up an idea in the mind, one party, one side, then it has its momentum. And then that momentum it becomes harder or more difficult to deflect or strategically move one way or the other, because then I have my own idea that I want to bring into play. But if I'm present and I know what is potentially coming, based on their facial expressions and the body language and what they're about to say, all those things. If I'm present, then I can kind of foresee what may be about to happen, and then I can strategically, basically plan to or say something. Is that what you're saying? A little bit?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you for that. And then the next one. So physical, mental, and
emotional yielding. Emotional yielding is very much like mental yielding, but it's with our own interpersonal conflicts. So you think about, oftentimes things will happen to us and we'll respond, and we'll go down this path, and we might get an hour, a day, a week down that road and realize maybe that wasn't the best choice. But with yielding, if we could have taken a step back and been more in the present moment and analyzed the scenario, oftentimes we can make a more educated choice. It saves us a lot of heartache on the other side. And I've been explaining this idea of yielding for many years, and one of the most common things I'll hear people say is, that makes a lot of sense. I use yielding all the time. And while I would agree, I think everybody does some degree of yielding in their life, whether they're acknowledge that it's yielding or not. It's kind of like, if you or I were to walk into a crime scene with a detective who's been on the job for 30 years, I guarantee you that person would see things about the series of events and the timeline that I know at least I would have no clue of. And I truly believe that if you don't do a meditative practice, there's things inside yourself and in other people that you will go through life and never have any clue of, because you don't have that level of awareness without this kind of practice in your life.
And there's also some skill that, in that example that you gave, there's skills, and having done something over and over again for, let's say, 20 years. So that skill comes into play, but then that skill becomes more refined or more effective because you coming into the interaction or whatever it is that you show up at. It could be a sales call with someone, it could be a negotiation with someone, or it could be dealing with an employee or a boss or something like that. So when you come to, and you may have a number of years of experience doing that, closing sales, whatever it is. But when you come to that with this meditative mindset, presence of mind, which is based on the number of years of practice that, or, have some practice that you've done, that becomes more powerful and more impactful. Would you agree with that? Is that a good statement?
Exactly. And, that's a reason why a lot of athletes are turning to the meditative practice to help improve their percentages and their performance because, they're already at the top of their game. How do they get it 1 or 2% better?
Exactly.
Right. And meditation helps them see those little details that brings out all the magic, because any athlete can get to 85% of their potential, but take one that gets to 95, 96, 97. Those are the ones that we look at and think, man, that guy's just phenomenal, or that girl's incredible, and the meditative arts are one of those things that help us get those last few percentages in anything we do.
Absolutely. And I think that this can be applied and transferred to almost any skill that we do repeatedly, dealing with employees, leading people, or, all the interactions that we have with other people where, there's give and take, or, we're trying to come to some kind of common ground, have a conversation, those kinds of things. Sales, it's a great example because we do that repeatedly. Then that could be a process and a system, but then that process and system can get more powerful when we come to it with a sort of a presence of mind, with this meditative state of mind. Bruce Lee said, mind like water, my friend. Mind like water. Do you have any take on that quote?
Yeah, it's one thing, a lot of times people will come into the practice and, for example, I will teach them a standing meditation. And they'll move their arms up. We call like embracing the tree, where you're sticking your arms around like a big yoga ball and you're holding them out about shoulder height. Yeah. And I'll walk around and I'll say, okay, relax and stand upright and drop your shoulders. And I'll come up to them and make some adjustments. And I'll say, okay, let's drop your shoulders. And they'll look at me and they'll say, they are dropped. And then I'll take my fingers and I'll move them down 2 inches. And when you have that stiffness in the body and that lack of awareness, think about that tension and that rigidity that you're just not even aware of, that we're holding all day, every day, and being more like water and more flexible and more pliable and able to adapt and move and listen to the environment can benefit us in so many ways.
Sure. Absolutely. I want to go back a little bit to something that you mentioned, the emotional yielding, and this is, to me, so important when we deal with other people. And in business world, we are trying to not bring emotions into things. And we talk about emotional intelligence and things like that, which is a step in the right direction. But we're almost acting as if there are no emotions. And we kind of ignore them, or we don't acknowledge them, but they're there. So emotional yielding. So I'm assuming that there are two aspects to this. There's my emotions, and then, for example, in this interaction, there's your emotions, right? Or if I'm having a negotiation with someone, it's their emotions. Now, my emotions, hopefully I'm in touch with. So what am I yielding to? Am I yielding to their emotions, or am I yielding to my emotions? Or is there some kind of an interaction that's happening here between the two people's emotions? And there is some yielding happening.
So that's a great question. And the answer is both. So you want to be aware of their presence and their emotions, but also yours. And sometimes letting a little bit of emotion come into an interaction, I think it can be powerful. Yeah. But as long as it's recognized and controlled, because if it doesn't have that awareness, sometimes it can get out of hand. And same thing with other people. If you recognize the emotion coming into that, it could be maybe something that you want to nurture, and it could also be something that maybe you want to direct a little bit different direction, and so that awareness is very important.
Absolutely. And I'm assuming that in my world, and for example, like there is a sales technique that I teach, which is about, how do you sell without being a salesman, so that you're not pushing and you're not being a pushy salesperson, but it's more like they're coming to me and I get out of the way so that they do their reasoning about why it is that they need to do business with me. So in that sense, I think that being aware of what I'm feeling in the moment. So there's two ways to say, okay, I'm going to yield my emotion and I'm going to manipulate my own emotion, quote unquote. My take on that, and you can disagree with this if you want. My take on this is that if I'm aware of my emotions, I'm more likely to be able to have the power to shift them or manipulate them or control them, as you said, or do something with them, than not being aware of them. Meaning that if I just show up into a situation and I don't know how I'm feeling, it's going to be uncontrollable emotions on my side. And then I may blow up or say something wrong in a wrong place, in a wrong tonality, and then just might blow the deal, right? Do you have any take on that? I guess my question is it better to be aware of my own emotions than not be aware of them?
100%, and so many people, I'm sure you've experienced this many times.
Yeah.
They don't even recognize when they're getting emotional until it gets to the point where it's already kind of too late to turn it around. And that awareness, is so valuable in anything we do. It doesn't matter if it's physical, mental, if it's emotional. It's kind of like, if you're standing on a hill and you drop a pebble, it's easy to bend down and pick it up. But if it starts rolling down the hill and the avalanche starts, there's no stopping it, and so that ability to recognize things before they get out of balance is such an invaluable skill in life.
Sure. Right. And then in my experience, to the degree that I'm able to be aware and be able to work with my own emotions and be in control of them, is the degree to which I'm able to help them with their emotions. Because they may or may not be aware of their emotions. Because I'm not going to assume that they've taken meditation classes, right? They might be showing up from whatever situation that they were in right before this event, right? So then I'm more likely to be able to give them space within which they can express whatever it is that they're feeling. And then I don't take it personally. I let them do what they need to do with it. But then I can help them get into the place that I want to get them into, emotionally speaking.
Yeah.
Right.
And we've all experienced that, whether it was intentional or not. You think about when you're around somebody who's really peaceful and calming, and it just makes us start to feel that way. And then maybe you're around somebody who's stressed and anxious, and you start feeling stressed and anxious.
Absolutely.
We can guide that, but being strategic about it, we have to have that awareness to notice when those changes are happening.
Absolutely. What are the benefits of meditation? Why should I meditate as a human being, as a person, but also as a professional who's working in a business environment, or as an athlete, or someone who wants to improve his performance?
There are so many benefits. I have students that come in through the years that are coming to the practice because they want to stay healthy and more mobile into their older age so they can watch their grandkids grow up, stay flexible and keep their body vibrant. Other people are coming in because they have stress disorders or dealing with anxiety or panic attacks. Other people maybe have an illness that they're working through and they want to bring that energy out to help heal their illness. Then we have athletes and creatives who are coming in to improve their awareness and their creativity and their focus so they can improve their performance. I mean, there's just so many reasons. One of the things that I always tell people, if you're thinking about taking on a meditation practice, and this is so important, I have 3 things that I think that you should all consider and spend some time doing. And even if you've tried meditation before, but it's really not a lifestyle for you yet, this would be a great exercise for you as well. And the first thing is, think about, why are you being drawn to the practice? Do you want to stay healthier into your later years? Are you dealing with a stress disorder? And then not just that surface level why, but if you accomplish that and you're able to deal with those panic attacks, how is that going to improve your life? And then if you don't deal with that, how is that going to be negative on your life? And really make that fuel and have that reason to keep you consistent. Because the thing about meditation, and where a lot of people get off track, is they think, I heard meditation was good for if I have a panic attack. So when I have a panic attack, I'll go practice. It's kind of like, if I want an apple, I can't go plant a seed today. You've
that's right.
got to put the time in and invest your energy in it
Right.
to really reap the rewards.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is you have to understand that the consistency in your practice is where all the gold is at. You have to practice a little bit every day.
Yeah.
The Dalai
Yeah.
Lama once said that everybody should practice meditation 20 minutes a day. Unless you're too busy, then you should meditate for an hour.
Right.
We
Yeah.
all have 20 minutes a day that we
Sure.
can devote to a meditation practice, and through that we develop this discipline, this consistency, this integrity, this
Yeah.
perseverance that
Right.
starts to feed over into everything we do in life.
Sure.
And so approaching it with this mindset is really valuable. And then third thing to think about is you have to find yourself a guide that's going to help you and point you in the right direction, because, I've been studying meditation now for 36 years and I'm still just a student. I'm not the master. And
Right.
if you think that you're going to go out there and watch a YouTube video or listen to an audio and you're going to understand how to build a meditation practice, you're going to waste many years. And I've seen this where I've had students come into the academy that have been self-taught and they've been practicing for 15 years, and they'll see somebody here who's been under guidance for a year, who's way farther along in the practice. And our lives are short, our time is valuable, and finding a guide is not that difficult. So if you can do that and you can find a good, strong why, maintain consistency and find a good guide, and you stick with the practice and do it every day for a year, I guarantee you'll do it for the rest of your life, because you'll see so many benefits from the practice. It'll be one of the best things you ever do for yourself.
Thank you. Yes, I'm 100% with you on that. All the things that you just said, those three things. You mentioned yielding and in different perspectives, in different contexts. You said mental, physical, and emotional. And I want to talk about the fourth dimension, which is, now, some people, you can call it spiritual. Some people don't like the term. They don't want to call it spiritual. You can call it the field of consciousness, or the field. And if you are a scientific mind, and if you're an atheist, that's okay. But there is a field of all potentialities, as they call it in quantum physics, right? Where all things come from. Everything that we experience. Presumably, there has to be something that is a substratum, that is a continuity underneath everything that we experience. That's mind, body, spirit. So the physical, mental, and emotional. So beyond the thoughts, beyond the emotions, there is that element that we cannot name. In Taoism, there are different names at different philosophies of the world, and but I think they all lead to the same thing. They call it the oneness that we all share. Or there is in Taoism, I think they call it the uncarved block of wood, right? They always talk about that in those negative terminology. So the mind cannot grasp it, but you kind of, it points to it. You can call it the awareness, or the openness, or the unknown. Sometimes we call it unknown that is known, but then that can be unknown. So we talk about in this kinds of way. But it leads to this mysterious, which I don't think is a mysterious element. When we feel it. When you led me through that meditation, I felt it. Can you talk about that a little bit? Is there such an element that you can get in touch with through meditative practices?
Yes, for sure. And when we talk about meditation, I've got it broken down into 5 paths or directions that you can do with the practice.
Right.
There's the more athletic or physical side that we've already talked about the benefits.
Sure.
There's the therapeutic side that helps improve our health and longevity. There's the medical side. There's the philosophical side. And then there's the meditative or spiritual side.
Right.
And in that meditative or spiritual side, we're talking about the internal energy of the body, the energy of the earth, and the energy of the heavens or the universe.
Right.
And all of these things are connected. I'm sure everybody out there has seen the Tai Chi symbol before. But the substance of the Tai Chi symbol, it starts from what we call Wu Ji. And Wu Ji is that point of nothingness, where there's no positive or negative charge. It's just this point with with nothing happening.
Yeah.
And then once we put a positive and negative charge to it, it starts to spiral. And when most people see the yin yang symbol, you see
Yeah.
the two kind of fish with
Two
the dot
dots and
the dot
right.
in the middle, right?
Mhm.
Well, that's only one dimension of the yin yang symbol. Not
Yeah.
only is there the face in the movement, but there's
Yeah.
also a spiral that's causing
Ah,
those fish to swim left and right.
right. Right. Yeah.
And that spiral is what takes the state from a wuji or nothing
Mhm.
into the positive and negative, which is our yin yang.
Mhm.
That state in Taoist philosophy we call Tai Chi. And Tai
Yeah.
Chi is not a form, it's not a martial art.
Yeah.
Tai Chi is a force. It's kind of like God, if you will, or if
Yeah.
you're want to label it that way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's the energy, in Star
Yeah.
Wars, they call it the Force. It's
Right.
that energy that takes it from nothing
Mhm.
into something. And
Yeah.
when we learn a meditation practice, that's one of
Mhm.
the elements that we cultivate and we study and we start to expand our awareness in that
Yeah.
area. A lot of meditation masters and Qigong practitioners will spend their entire life's journey working towards that stage of
Mhm.
enlightenment. And
Yeah.
this is what we're doing is we're trying to understand that force that takes us
Yeah.
from nothing into that positive and negative charge.
Absolutely. Yes. Beautiful said. And there are every culture talks about this in some way, shape, or form. In Indian philosophy, they talk about Shakti and Shiva. And there is even a form of Shiva where it's half woman and half man. The idea there is that there is this, you can call it nothingness, which is not phenomenal, but it's just all potentiality. It's just there. There's no time there, and there's no, it's beyond time and space. But then from that it is also a source of that which is time bound and which is space bound. And then from that comes the phenomenal world with all the emotions and thoughts and feelings and all the senses and sensations. So, which is kind of what you're explaining. Although, in yin yang, you were saying that yin yang is the two aspects of the manifested world, and beyond that, there is this other nothingness, or whatever you need, the one that you don't want to actually give a name. So it's a beautiful conversation, and I love it. Yeah. So thank you for shedding light on that aspect of it. So for our listeners and our viewers, if you are into that kind of thing, or if this kind of intrigues you in some way, I would highly encourage you to follow this and read about it and learn from people, reach out to people that have something to say about this. And, you make up your own mind as to what you want to do with it. So, but I think it's a very rewarding journey, pursuing this what enlightenment that you speak of, the nirvana, the real nirvana, not the nirvana that we talk about on a daily basis. Someone knows nothing about meditation, what it is. If there was one thing, I think you kind of talked about this a little bit. If there was one thing that you can tell them to do, you talked about consistency every single day, but it's very short. Let's say 1 minute or 2 minutes. Just do this every single day and then build on that. Is there something like that you can recommend to someone who is starting out?
Yes, but before I do, I'd like to make a little detour.
Okay, sure.
So, there's a lot of things that you could do for 1 minute every day.
Yeah.
And I think, though, before you do that, it's so important to go back to what we talked about earlier by spending some time thinking about why you want to do that,
Uh-huh.
understanding that you need to be consistent and finding a
Sure.
guide to help you with that.
Yeah.
Now, that said, something that you could do just once every day is maybe set an alarm on your phone to go off
Yeah.
every 90 minutes
Yeah.
and just stop doing what you're doing and count out 10 deep breaths.
Perfect.
It's something very simple that would only take 2 minutes to do each time you did it.
Right.
And you would get a lot of benefit from that.
There's something that's been spinning in my head, and I want to kind of get some clarification on it. So you talked about the philosophical aspect of meditation, and I wanted to ask about this, but I didn't want to break the flow of the conversation. But towards the end, I want to kind of get clarification on what do you mean by philosophical side of meditation? What is that?
It's working with different training things that we do as far as memorization of philosophy. For example,
Right.
I'm sure you've probably heard of the Tao Te Ching.
Mhm.
So there's things like this where you could memorize, like, one of the sayings in the Tao Te Ching is, a way can be a guide, but not a fixed path. Names can be
Right.
given, but not permanent labels. Non-being is called the beginning of heaven and earth. Being is
Mhm.
called the mother of all things. Always
Right.
passionless, thereby observe the subtle. Ever intent, thereby observe the apparent. These two come from the same source, but differ in
Mhm.
name. Both are
Yeah.
considered mysteries. The mystery of mysteries is the gateway to marvels.
Mhm.
So understanding philosophies like this and really investigating them and breaking them down and seeing what they mean helps
Mhm.
train our mindset and our strategy towards how we approach life and how we have, stability in our thoughts and in our strategies and how we communicate. And so the philosophical part of the practice is something that's always been a major passion of mine and something
Mhm.
that I've followed very deeply.
Sure.
And, any one of those 5 paths that I mentioned earlier, somebody could study any one of those for their entire life's journey and
Yeah.
never be the true master.
Sure. We go through our lives and depending on the phase in our life, we say, okay, this is the kind of person I want to talk to right now. So who is that person that you would like to have reach out to you, and how do they do that? What's the best way for them to get hold of you?
I think anybody who wants to improve and
Yeah.
wants to find a deeper level of meaning in life,
Sure.
I would really love to work with.
Mhm.
And, they can reach out to me through my website, theyieldingwarrior.com. If you're interested in the philosophies that we've been talking about, you
Sure.
can check out, I'm giving away a free copy of my book at theyieldingwarrior.com/book.
Mhm.
Also on that website, I have an online program that teaches you some of the strategies we've been talking about and how to integrate a meditation into your life in many different ways through movement practices, sitting and standing meditation, breath work, the philosophy. And then I also have a teacher training program up there for anybody out there who's looking to learn how to hand down these arts and help spread the word.
Sure. Great. And I will put all that information, basically the contact information, on the show notes, which will accompany this episode. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. This was an enlightening conversation, and I had a blast. And
Thank you
I
too,
learned
sir.
a lot.
It's been great.
I like to find out what your experience is being on the other side, sharing your knowledge. What was it like to be interviewed on this episode, on this podcast?
I appreciate getting the chance to share with people something that I've been so passionate about in my life's journey. I've had, over 26,000 students come through my academy, and I have seen hundreds of stories of how the meditative arts has positively influenced people's lives, and getting the chance to come on here and chat with you gives me the opportunity to share some of this information with other listeners out there. And if even one or two of them take on a meditation practice and it changes their life for the better, it's all been worth it to me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And was there, you've been on many of the podcasts and you've done this types of things. What was different about this conversation that we had, if there was anything different?
This was, there's definitely different levels of professionalism that I see in the podcast, you can tell that you're very professional, and it's been an easy conversation. You listen. I can tell that you put some thought into it. That's always appreciated from me. Like in the last 5 months, I think I've done 108 podcasts.
Wow.
So I've been on a lot, and I've seen some that I'm surprised they even have a podcast, but this has been definitely one in the top 10% for sure.
Oh, wow. Oof. That is a tremendous testimonial for it, and I appreciate that feedback.